Hello everybody, my name is Michael, you know me as Coding Jungle, and today I want to go over some of the features that are found inside the DevToolbox. First thing we're going to go over are the extensions that get added, that you can add to your application that will work with Toolbox and work with IPS. So let's go over them. The first one we'll go over is Header Doc, and what Header Doc does a couple of things. The first thing it will do, if you have it installed, let's go to an application that's got Header Doc, and we'll use Toolbox as an example. Come over here to extensions, and we find the Toolbox, and we find Header Doc, and I just got it simply named Header here. You can name it whatever you want. All right, when you open up the extension, you'll find there are 5 classes here. I'm going to move this over a little bit. I've got a 50-inch screen and a microphone in my way. So let's go over the first one. Now, this is actually what enables the header doc. Now, you might be sitting there going, what is a header doc? That's kind of a weird name. What is that? Well, this is what the header doc is basically. It is this quick information up here at the top, like what's the name of the, or what's the quick description of what the class does, the author of it, the copyright, what it's for, what it belongs to, when it was added to the app, and what is the current version. Now, this stuff doesn't make any sense to you right now because some of it is placeholders, because some of these things only get added when you push when you do a build a tar. So if we come over here and we look at a tar that's already been built, like from Stratagem, excuse me, and I open up one of its files here, as you can see, the copyright gets added in. Okay, that's supposed to happen. Alright, that might be broken. I hate showing off previews and it's broken. But anyway, it shows the version and it's supposed to show the sense, but for some reason it's not. It might have been because I didn't have it installed or working with it when I created these files. That could be a very good reason. But anyway, that's what these are placeholders, and it's supposed to pull them out and swap them out at when you build the app, and that's what header doc does. Index enabled, that's another feature of header doc. When I was creating Toolbox, I didn't want to have a bunch of like 1,000 different extensions for various features inside Toolbox, so I tried to compress them, and I felt this one belonged here to the header doc. And basically what this one does, index enabled, the description is if enabled, will add a blank index HTML to each folder. And what that does, it will go through all the folders that get built and add a blank index HTML so people can't access it through the URL in case you don't have directory listings turned off on your server. Maybe you're on a shared host or you might not be aware of it. So they can't go in there and get a directory listing and file listing of all the files that are installed, say, to sources. And it will get stopped by, unless they know the structure and the file names and stuff like that, they won't be able to access them directly. And so the index will catch that and just display a blank page, basically, because you see it's just a blank index page. That's what that one does. Let's go back to it. All right, file skip and dir skip is for when you build the tar file. What this allows you to do, let's say you have a folder in here or something, or a file even, that's only intended to be used in your development build. It's not intended to be included with the production app. You can tell this to automatically skip that, to not include it in your the tar. And this is good for like vendor folders or modified files and that sort of stuff. So you can come in here and you can tell it not to use it, not to include it in the tar. It's just a simple array, so you get an array passed to it to already skip, and then you just add to that array. So if you wanted to skip, let's say the README. You can just tell it to skip it, basically. And same with folders, you just put the folder name there. You don't have to put any absolute paths or anything like that. You can use relative paths, so you can tell it to. And it will automatically skip, if I could spell, any of the vendors. Alright, that's pretty much what that does. I don't use it for this app. I use it for another app, but I'm not going to show it to you because it's a client's app. The exclude, what this does, when it's running the header doc, this actually goes along with this setting here, or this method here. What it does is if you want to skip folders or files here, you just put them in the array. This is useful if you are pulling in third-party libs or something like that you don't want to get your header information munged into it. So you just tell it not to even go over those folders. Now by default, it doesn't. It already excludes any folder called vendor or third party. So if you don't want it to run on those or any additional folders that you might have or files, you could tell it to skip it. All right, that's pretty much all that one does. It's pretty simple, but it adds some nice features to IPS. Like I like it because it does the index thing. I've moved away from this a lot. It's probably why I didn't notice the sense being broken. Because when I added this in, I thought this was a cool idea, but the more I get into development, I realize this is kind of a pointless thing. I mean, I guess it's useful if you're doing, a big project. But when you're working by yourself, this stuff's kind of pointless. All right. Proxy helpers. This is the interesting one. Because what proxy helpers do, we'll go take a quick look at. Let's go look at a useful one. Let's go look at like stratagem, something that I've been developing for a while now. Actually, I don't think I use proxy helpers, or do I? I guess I do. All right, what proxy helpers do, you have three methods that get created in here. You get store, request, and map. All right, basically what store is, it adds a property. I mean, store and request are more or less the same thing, but they're for two different IPS methods. The store is for the data store. So you can add your data stores to it. So when you're calling a data store, it doesn't error out in your gutter over here on your in your IDE, and you tell it what kind of data to expect from it, what kind of property it is. Like the PS property, you can use W for a property that's write only, and you can use R for a property that's read only. But if it's a read and write, you can just use P, and it will put a property tag on there, and it will add this, and it will say, oh, it's an array. So your IDE knows how to interpret your call to a data store. And the same for request. Now, the proxy class generator itself will try to build as many properties into a class as it can. Like if it's a a database class, like if it's an active record, a node, an item class, it will pull the database field names and add them to the record, and then it will go through and look for your getters and setters and try to match those up as best it can to try to determine what kind of property that is. But this is for stuff that isn't a database entry, that isn't necessarily a part of the class. Like if we looked at, say, the ones that I got that are baked in by default. For request here, like I have app, which is a string, module, string, IDs, usually an integer, PID, parent ID is usually an integer, do is usually a string, this kind of stuff. These are ones that I've noticed that IPS more or less uses. I mean, there are some things like get app, that's I think a me thing that I've added. But enable, last, chunks, input, action, params, filter. These are typically ones that IPS use, or mostly use. There are some in here that aren't used anymore, or I don't have because I've never added them in, or I've never seen them, or I just don't think about it. But this is a quick way to get your files in your gutter here and your error detection and notice detection not to show so many errors in the gutter here. That's basically what the store and request does for those two items. Now, the map, this one's kind of a little bit harder to explain because I never intended the map to be used outside of Toolbox. But I added it as an extension because I found it useful in a couple other apps that I was writing. Now, what basically map does, you create a file, or you create a helper class. It has its own abstract class. Let's go look at the store one. Or actually, let's look at the output one, because the output one is really why I wrote it for. Or situations like this for the output one. It's got a helper abstract class you extend, and it's got one method, and it's called process. And what process does, you can add stuff to the proxy file itself. Like here, if we go look at the proxy file for output, you can see that it creates a method, a JSON method, which is already a method inside the output class, but there's a problem with the one that IPS, because their doc block for it isn't accurate. So if we go to class and system, and we open up the output one, as you can see, it adds the JSON in there. And the reason I do that is because for whatever reason, it is expecting it to be in the original. Let me go actually look up the JSON method. If I can find it. There it is. Oh, that's JSON LD. Oh, there it is. The return is void string, or the first one is a string and the second one's an int, but it errors out in the code because it's expecting a string, not an array. So I just basically switched these two, and that's all I really. That's what the intent of the map function is on the I forgot what I was talking about. The proxy helpers. You create a class and you define the process, and basically what it does is when it goes and writes the file, it will pull information out of there and add it to the proxy class itself. That's all it does. It's once you look at how I have some of them over here, you get a pretty good idea what I intended it for because there are several, like for item. Um, I don't need that one anymore. Sometimes I use it to add in specific, especially if they not my methods. Like I also use it to add in properties to a model or to an IPS class that they're not my classes. So it's kind of like the store and the request, but I add them here because I didn't want to create a bunch of methods in the extension. So I created the model or the map thing, and that's what it does. And so you can see what various things I'm doing, like the URL here, like for a request, it adds a return to the curl class basically. So it doesn't error out, so I get the options out of the curl class. And I know curl is not the only one it uses. It could also use sockets, but most people are going to have curl. So, and they're better defined in the curl class than they are in the the other call. You know what I'm talking about. The sockets class. So it just returns it just tells it that the return is an instance of the curl class basically. That way my IDE has something to look up when I'm using request. So that's pretty much it on that one. The next one, okay, special hooks. This works for both Proxy class and the Dev Center. And basically, what a special hook is, anybody who knows me knows that I have a love-hate relationship with the um, the hooks here. I love them because they give me the flexibility to hook into anywhere I need to in IPS, but I hate them because they're very difficult to work with in the IDE because I don't get features in my IDE on them. I don't get the IntelliSense. I don't get um, it doesn't tell me that this method is incompatible with the parent one without a way to tell my IDE what hook class is. Now, I've done various things over the years to do this. One time I had file watchers in PHP Storm that would see if you had a hook class open, and it would create a proxy on the fly for it, and it would update based on what hook you had, and that was slow. That would take a couple. I mean, sometimes it didn't even work. Other times, I tried to actually rewrite this to include a unique hook class here, and the init itself would handle that. It would look for to see if it was hook class or something else. Even though that one worked, it was kind of messy, and sometimes it didn't fully remove that on tar files, and it would cause some havoc when you installed it on somebody's site. So I've moved away from all that. Basically, I mean, it was so simple that it kind of blew me away that it eluded me for so long. I think at one time I had come up with this idea, but it wasn't unique enough. I was trying to put it inside this bracket here, so it would never hit. But the IDE wasn't sophisticated enough, I guess you could say, to really take advantage of that. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But this seems to work almost 100% of the time. I What I've done is with the special hooks, when you build the proxies, it will open up all the hook files to see which ones they belong to, see what the parent class is, and it adds a unique namespace to it and builds the hook class in the DT proxies down here. Because if we come down here and we look at hooks, it will have all these, like this one's for DB, that one be A423, so it would be FA423. Basically what it does is it on the hook itself it comments it out, so eval never hits this. So to PHP it looks just like this, but to our IDE it looks like the whole file basically. And this namespace gives it the ability to have the hook class here without any alterations, and it tells it to load this one here for the IDE to look off of, and then it says, oh hey, this is a, it extends this, so you gain all the methods that, I don't even know why I got that one open. I must have opened that one by mistake. Or no, I opened that one first, but I really wasn't sure which one was which. And it gives me the ability to do any class in here that, or method in here, like if I was to type that in, it would automatically create that for me. But if I remove this, the IDE would suddenly go, oh, this is an undefined class, and I wouldn't have the IntelliSense in here. But if we added it back, suddenly it's all back. So that's what that does. It also, when you build the tar with the toolbox installed, it will actually remove the namespace. It will just have, like here in the stratagem example again, if we were to go into the hooks, it would just have the PHP. But if we went to go look at the calendar event hook in stratagem here, it has, okay, I guess it doesn't, because I haven't actually ran proxy class on. Man. But that's what it does. It removes it when it builds it, but it adds it back in when you export it. And if you, it will alter the Git or the repo. So when it first runs, because it's designed to, when it runs again, it's designed to see if the hook already has this in there. If it does, it just builds it takes it and builds the existing proxy for it. But if it doesn't, it adds it in there, so it will alter Git output. It will say it's an altered file. So just keep that in mind when you're using that one. But it it allows, like I said, it allows you to work with the hooks more easily with your IDE, basically. Constants, basically what that does, it allows you to add values here to like important and DevTools. Like if I was to look at the extension here for DevTools, where are you? I've lost you. The toolbox, I should say. And we want to look at the constants. It would allow us to add we can actually remove that one because I don't need that one anymore. I've been meaning to remove it, but keep forgetting to remove it. So we might as well remove it now. But it allows you to add to the Git constants is this one here. And the add to important is this one here. So anything that you decide is important enough to be added in the important, it will, if it's an IPS one, because normally the IPS ones will get broken up into their first letters. So if you went to go look, like use development builds, it doesn't actually show up here. It shows up in important because it's added to the important. Or maybe not. Oh, there it is. Use development builds. And I don't know why that one shows up at the top. That's weird. But it shows all the important ones for IPS, or ones that I think are important to IPS. The rest are just, you can go in and change them. Like some of them, if you go in here and like the cache bus, it shows a method or an algorithm, I guess you can call it, instead of a value. And what basically that's for, Chrome and other browsers are very aggressive on their caching, and this helps mitigate them caching JavaScript and CSS for too long if the cache bust is randomized. So if you look at my constants here, it's got the cache bust as a random string all the time. So every time the page loads, it gets a new cache busting key. And that helps me from having to sit here and make sure my inspector is open and right click empty, that kind of thing. And if I'm in Firefox, I don't have to sit there and refresh 30, 40 times. I might just have to refresh once. Sometimes it's twice. But that's what that one's for. But yeah, that's pretty much it on the constants, ph, wherever it went. I've lost it, guys. I've lost it. There it is. And then the format values, like if you got anything that's specialized and you want it to handle it a certain way, you can tell it to format it a special way. But that's pretty much it on that one. The next one would be menu. It just adds the menu items up here. You can go look at the toolbox one because there's several examples of adding toolboxes to, or adding menus to the toolbox in here. Like maybe there's not. Am I in toolbox? Yeah. Actually, I think I moved them into the main because it didn't make any sense having them up. But if you looked at Babel or the actual script, like this one's actually messy, so I might work on this at one point. It is kind of messy in here because there's two places. Like this is for the top bar, and these are for the children elements. But you just tell it to where to add it at, what's the key root or the ID of this one, and then you tell it to add. It's pretty simple. Toolbox meta, you could probably ignore that. I did that in case I had stuff that went into the toolbox, which I thought I had more of it, but once I got done adding it in and went to go add it in for the application I was working on, I realized there wasn't that much information that I could add to the toolbox meta. But if you want to go look at it, there is an example here in the toolbox itself. Like you'd have to go read the toolbox information, the PHP toolbox information from the plugin to figure out how to use this stuff. That's why I really don't want to go over it because it's not built into the toolbox directly. It's meant for the PHP toolbox, not the dev toolbox. But it's there in case you want to add stuff to it. And then in settings, it's as it sounds. It adds the settings. Like if you went to go look in here, you would see that there's profiler and proxy. That's profiler, or I'm sorry, that's proxy and that's profiler. And you just add them in like in an array, or not an array, but in the forms class. Well, my forms class, not IPS's. So you might need to figure out how that one works if you want to add form data to it. It's not really all that hard. But yeah, and then you tell it how to format it if it has any special formatting to it. I don't think either. Okay, this one does. I'm telling it to who can use it, so it's a members field. So it it's got to pull the member value out of it, and then it can save it as a JSON. So that's pretty much what I think that's all the extensions. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's 6 of them, or 7 of them. Yeah, 7 of them. And they do various things. They give you special abilities inside the toolbox in various places. Some of them are probably more useful than others. You probably find more use out of like the header doc and the special hooks than you would proxy helpers, constants menu. It's just ways to add features to or add stuff to the toolbox that you normally wouldn't have. So, if you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. All right, you guys have a good one.